Hi, I'm Brett and welcome to Reliance Australia. Today's video is on how to replace the bearing on the back of a clothes dryer. Look, we've got Fisher Paykel or Fisher Paykel, depends how you want to pronounce it. I guess it's a tomato thing, isn't it? So anyway, Fisher Paykel clothes dryer, and the bearing on the back of the drum just disintegrated essentially. And so this video is just a reasonably short one. It takes you through the steps that I took to pull it apart. And then there's also some tips in there on how, when you're putting it back together, to make life a little bit simpler for yourself as well. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it. Yeah, so what we have here is a Fisher Paykel. It's actually a model number 93511 clothes dryer, or if you're looking for the actual part number or model number, it's an ED56. And what's happened is that the bearing on the back of the drum has let go. So there's not too many videos on YouTube at the moment about how to replace this particular model. I know there are other models out there where they say how to replace the rear bearing, but some of the bearings look like pieces of plastic, whereas this is actually a bearing with an inner and outer race. So I'll see what I can do putting this video together to explain what I've done. So what I did originally is, you'll see over on the floor there, if I can zoom in on that, is actually the piece of plastic that sits on the top here and goes over the top, and you need to actually undo that first. There's a few screws, about 6 actually, and then I took the back plate off, which is there on the floor. You notice that there's a little vent hole there, which this little piece of pipe actually attaches onto from inside there. But from what I can work out, and speaking to the guys at the repair shop, is I now need to take this rear plate off, because that's what the drum actually mounts to, and you'll notice I've actually got the bolt out already. And that's where the bearing was actually sort of sitting on, as a bolt that attaches the drum to this plate. So I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen, and my light just went off, so that's really cool. Let's see if I can get that sensor light to come back on. There we go. Yeah, so I'll see how we go, and I'll keep you updated as we go through. But my next plan is to take out some 2 screws here and 2 screws over there to take this drum off. I'll probably do a couple of screws as well, or maybe not. See how I go. Okay, you probably noticed that it's a bit brighter now, so I've had to get some work lights. Apparently my sensor light is actually also broken, so it doesn't stay on when you flick the switch the number of times you need to. But it looks like now I need to actually take the top off so I can actually slide this plate out. It's not without doing some bending, which I don't really want to do. I'm going to take that top off and see what I've got underneath there now, so see how we go after that. So one of the things the guys at the shop warned me about was having a good look at how the belt goes across the pulleys underneath before I pull it off, because they said it's highly likely that it'll fall off. And if you don't know how that belt goes back on, and there's a crack in that belt. So that belt may need to be replaced rather sooner than later, but anyway, we'll keep going. Sorry about the jumpy video. I've taken the lid off, you can see it over here. What you see there is just a big clump of lint that I've pulled out. And for those that haven't done this sort of stuff before, it's a good idea that when you take your screws out, you place them in a pattern as they came out. You'll notice that I haven't got that with the other ones over there, because I actually did that last weekend. But the reason you'll see a vacuum cleaner over here, and I highly recommend it, is that in under this, there's a whole heap of lint. It's around a whole heap of electrical connections, and that's where I took a whole other lint from. So for those that aren't familiar with electricity, lint is actually a really great fire starter. And any spark or short in your wiring, having 2 wires like that would pose some concern for me. Like, you wouldn't normally see any sparks there, but if you do, that would just light up. But also, with having this drum which I've taken off, you'll see a whole heap of lint on that drum too. So while I've got it apart, good time to actually give it a clean up. You notice I've put some little boxes there underneath to support the drum, because that's really just hanging at the moment on that little rubber band that's going around it. Yeah, so I've started taking off the lint, and what I didn't realise is on the back of this plate is actually the heater element, and that was also covered in lint. So I actually have to say I'm very surprised we haven't had a fire. As you can see down here, some of this is actually turned charcoaly, so at some point it has got very close to combustion if it hasn't already, but I want to really clean that out. You'll see on the back of the drum here, it's actually blowing the lint back into this heater element, so it's pretty scary. But what it tells me is that I will have to, or should do, on a more regular basis, is clean that out. That's heat, and lint will make fire, especially when it's blowing air across it as well. So it gives you all the ingredients for a nice little fire. I don't want to sound too dramatic here, but this lint here is just a normal lint that was found around the bottom of the machine. And this lint here is so charred, it's close to ignition point. I'm surprised it didn't go up, but that was around the heating element, so maybe a blessing in disguise, because that wasn't just a little, well, it's only one piece, that was just a little piece that was actually around that heating element. So worthwhile definitely giving your clothes dryers a pull apart and a clean out every couple of years, that's for sure. Yes, this is what's left of the L bearing. You can see the inner race is just, actually the balls are just disintegrated and it's just fallen out. Actually, this little piece here is actually the inner race, and that's what's still left on the bolt that holds the drum to this back plate. You'll see the difference here. This is the new kit. So the new kit comes with these two plates, the bearing and the two spacers. Look, that's about $55 all up, so it's not too bad, considering that the cost of actually having it replaced at the store would have been quite significantly more than that. We'll see how we go putting it back together though. Looks pretty straightforward at this stage, but they really could just be famous last words. So you see these two screws, I've actually taken them out of the old plate and just put them through. I did actually use a little stubby hand screwdriver because there's actually no thread on these plates. So you are literally threading it as you put them in. And you notice I'm wearing some gloves because I really didn't want to rip my hands apart on this sharp little plate steel. Okay, so that's now back in. It's just 4 screws. You see the 4 screws on the outside there. Really easy, took less than 30 seconds. I actually put some tape across that. So what you'll see, I've actually put this little, it's like a little plane, and the bolt actually goes through the middle here. And I'll put some tape across that because what I want to do now is put that backing plate over the top of it, and I don't want that to push out and fall back into here or into the drum, because what that'll do is it means that I won't be able to screw it on properly. So by putting that tape across, it just stops it from falling out from the opposite side. I've got a spacer to put on the back of that as well before I put that back plate back on. But before I put that back plate back on, I'll just check underneath, make sure I've got all that lint out as much as I can, and give it a good clean out. I've done a pretty good clean out already, but I'll just do a double check. And once I've got the little nut back on, it's still loose, but I haven't tightened that up. So now I've got the drum aligned, so that's good. I've put these 4 screws back in. But what I want to do is, before I put the rest of it back together, is just roll the drum over by hand. Because what that'll do is just make sure that belt is gently in the right spot, or it's in the right spot, gently, whichever way you want to go. Because if it's not quite in the right spot, and you wet pair on, I'm just going to snap it. So it's just a nice little way of getting it to self-align. As it goes around, and that feels good, looks good, going well. So now I'm just going to reassemble as I pull it apart, which will be put the top back on. I'll reconnect that vent tube, put the back plate back on, put the electrics back in, and then that top plate that plastic bit will go on the top. So look, it won't take long, it'll take probably a couple of minutes because it's just really probably a dozen or so screws that left to put that all back together. Then I'll give it a test, see if we have any destruction or whether it will work nicely. Okay, so it's all back together. I've plugged it in. I've got it outside because I'll just make sure it actually works before, just so it doesn't blow up or anything inside the house. So we've got power on. Let's hear how it goes. I'm happy with that. Thanks for tuning in. Hope that's been helpful to someone. Yeah, more than happy. It's working. Cheers. So there you go, job was done, and actually that worked out really well. Look, I was really happy with the outcome. It didn't blow up on me, so that's always a good start, and didn't catch on fire, thankfully, from all the lint that was built up on the inside. And look, I have to say, that was something that actually scared me a little bit, actually. When I pulled it apart, I didn't realise how much lint was in the back end of those clothes dryers, because lint and heat and also air blown across equals potentially big fire. So look, I was really happy that in the end I did pull it apart, gave it a really good clean out. And look, I hope you found that helpful. And if you have, and if you like it, please subscribe and give the big thumbs up, hit the little bell and share it with your friends. That'd be greatly appreciated. Until next time, I'll see you then.